Hello, 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 amigas, and welcome back to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast. I have such a lovely soul, and I've known her for a couple of years, and she's a fellow comrade in the legal field. And I'm excited to have her here because she's got amazing tips for any of you out there who are either wanting to get a divorce, wanting to get custody, or actually you're dating someone and you're wondering whether you should get a prenup, or maybe you want to reconsider getting married with this person because she's seen it all. So this is my beautiful friend, Elizabeth Johnson. Welcome, Amiga, to Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here with you.
Oh God, it's all my pleasure, believe me. Okay, so who's Elizabeth? Elizabeth is this badass family law attorney, and she's been in this arena since the year 2000. And now, for any of you out there, what is family law? Family law is everything that has to do with the family, either divorcing, whether it's custody, whether it's support, either from the spouse or for the child. I mean, everything, all the ins and outs of relationships. And I'm excited to have her here because she's been doing this. She's an expert in family law. And now more than ever, things are changing because we're home together forever. But maybe we don't want to be together forever. Right, Elizabeth?
Seriously, COVID, people have decided, like, if life is short, like, this is not what I want my life to be.
Yeah, exactly. So, Elizabeth, okay, so you've been doing family law forever, but why family law?
So family law found me. I started out working in the Department of Child Support Services down in San Diego, and they, either seek welfare reimbursement for cash aid that's paid out, and they try to track down a parent that's not in the picture to get reimbursement, or they just, establish an order for someone that needs assistance.
Right. And so you fell in love with it?
I really like helping people. So back when we were in a networking organization together, you always had a tagline, and you were, Jacqueline Tapia, keeping families together. and I was always like, oh, well, what am I doing? And I always worried that my tagline was like, I'm breaking families apart, but I'm not. I'm helping them get to their new normal. And that's what I like, because divorce is going to be a horrible time. I can't make that better. Because, we all have some personal accountability that we have in a relationship, and it takes two people to get us where we are today, so know that, but, it doesn't mean that it has to be like that forever. And so that's why I like family law. I like getting people through that, because sometimes it just is paper and math and the system, but it's also overwhelming if you think about, what do you hold the most dear? And what weighs on you the most. So, where am I going to live? How am I going to pay for it? And what about my kids? So if any one of those three things is up in the air, you're out of sorts. And think of all three of them being up in the air together.
Yeah. And that's the thing with family law. It's like, especially as a woman, we're the nurturers typically, right? We're the nurturers. We're the ones that usually are seeking out custody. And then you're at a point with your current relationship, and now you're fighting over custody.
Right.
So, and I know, because you and I've had many stories, many battles, not against each other,
right,
but just knowing our clients and what they're going through, and then realizing, like, shit, did she know he was like that before they got married?
Right.
So at what point, I mean, what's your advice? Like, before you get married, what should you look for? Because God knows, when we get all in love and we see this amazing man or amazing woman, but sometimes it's not that amazing.
I think that you really have to take someone as they are, and you have to think, like you can't think to yourself like, oh, I'm going to change him or I'm going to change her, and then, if she was just this, then everything would be perfect. People don't change very much unless they put a lot of effort into it. And so you can't just assume that it's going to happen. and look to see, you know, are you compatible in money, you know, financially? Do you have the same outlook? You know, even if you don't have any money right now, like when you have money, do you blow it? Do you go to the, you know, do you or your potential spouse, are you going to the casino? Are you not a saver? You know, that's okay, but just go into it with your eyes wide open, because we have, you know, women that come and they say, you know, my husband's been a gambler for years. And I'm like, well, he's been a gambler for years. You knew, you know,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that you have this, you know, very intricate system where you swipe his paycheck before he can get it so that you can pay your family bills. But like, don't be surprised.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Okay, so let's get into these stories, because I know there's so many. And I've always said that there's 5 reasons why people end up getting divorces. What do you see? What are the reasons behind a divorce, in your opinion?
I think that people don't choose their spouse every day. I think that marriages work and it's worth it, but you have to make that choice. You can't just, you know, be laissez-faire and expect that it's going to take care of itself. You know, yes, take care of yourself, but also take care of your spouse. What is going to make your spouse's day better, life easier? You know, what have you committed to do that you need to do so that they do what they've committed to do, you know, because it really is a partnership.
Yeah. And the partnerships are not always 50-50, right?
Right.
Yeah. And that, I think that's something that we need to really talk about, because I don't know, somehow people think, oh, it's 50-50. And I'm like, no, and I will honestly say it's never 50-50.
Right.
You know, when you're sick, is it going to be 50-50? No, you rely on your spouse to help you out.
It's always, you know, you lean on each other as you go.
Yeah.
And it's not always, and it's not always the same person carrying, you know, the other person, but that's the thing, is if you're leaning on each other, that's fine. But if the other, you know, if one person is always bent over and the other person is always leaning on the other, then you're going to become exhausted.
Right.
And not have anything else to give and not have any place else to go when there's a problem, because you're already at your end, your limits.
Right. Exactly. Now, I know there's been a lot of people in their limits during this time. So tell us, what have you been seeing about couples and why they're coming to you during this time?
A lot of couples have said, and I think I mentioned it to you before we started, but if we only have so much time left, this is not how I expected it to be. And so, you know, a lot of couples are not necessarily, you know, this, if stereotypically, you know, a spouse cheats on a spouse and they're blindsided by a divorce. But more now I'm seeing even there's not that other person. It's just, this is not what I want. This is not what, you know, if I have 20 years left, our children are grown. I want to move on. I want to enjoy that time with myself or someone else. But, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, I'm using this other person to segue into a new life.
Yeah. Oh my God. Exactly. I mean, and it's interesting because why are they picking that right now?
Because we see, you know, we're the world is in turmoil, we've lost loved ones, and we see it and we feel mortality more than ever, I think.
Yes, I totally see that. And then also, I mean, I would think that now that if you were despising your husband or wife before, now it's amplified because now you're stuck.
Oh, right. After 2 years in the house.
You think, right?
Yes.
Oh my God. So I'm sure that domestic violence has like been at the forefront of your practice.
Right. So at the beginning of COVID, you know, in March through June, the courthouses were closed, but for emergencies and but for domestic violence. And we saw a lot of domestic violence, and the definition of domestic violence is expanded to, you know, not just the classic assault or battery, fear of being injured or actually being injured, but more, you know, stalking or harassing. So, you know, 200 texts in 5 minutes. Where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? You know, I've looked at you on our tracking thing on our phone, and you're supposed to be at work, but you're at the 7-Eleven down the street. Who are you with? What are you doing? You know, and that is, you know, indicative of other things, you know.
Oh my-
So we did, you know, we are able to, you know, not just that alone, but in concert with other things, you know, that is sufficient sometimes for a restraining order.
Oh my God, I can imagine like how weird. I mean,
Yeah.
to do that, like Jesus Christ, 200 texts.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, no, and it's just you. I mean, like, you know, I've blown up someone's phone before, you know, for various reasons, and not always like, where are you? But like, you know, funny, you know, and you just keep going and going and going, but not 200.
Not 200. And
Mhm.
so now, okay, so would those texts be admissible in court in domestic violence restraining orders?
They are. So, I mean, the thing is there's a couple ways, you know, there's some Stitcher programs that stitch texts together so that they time and date stamp them for us. And that's always the best way. You know, otherwise we just have our clients, we make sure that they don't delete anything because it's very difficult for private bar attorneys to get phone records. So we just ask them to, you know, take pictures of the texts so that we can save them for if and when we need them. But we like them in context.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there are these like different mechanisms that you can do as a victim of domestic violence to protect yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say, for example, you get this stalker husband and you want to get out. What would you recommend for that person to
do? So, I mean, it depends if you have, you know, a child with, let's assume husband and wife are married and they have a child. So wife is being abused or an incident has happened and she called the police or she didn't call the police. If the police come, the police can issue something called an emergency protective order, which may kick the other party out and protect her and the child for, you know, a period of like 7 days. So in that period of time, she could come to me or another family law attorney and, you know, we can ask that the court issue a temporary restraining order. A temporary domestic violence restraining order lasts for 21 days and, you know, may keep the other party out of the house and give everybody some time to figure it out. And then at the end of the 21-day period, there's an evidentiary hearing where the court can grant a restraining order for 1, 3, you know, or up to 5 years.
Right.
But if a restraining order is granted, then there's a family law presumption that says that maybe that parent that was restrained, it's not in the child's best interest to be with that parent. And so it's a, you know, the flip of the coin is that knowing that there's a presumption that can exist if there's, you know, a domestic violence order. Sometimes I see false allegations of domestic violence, which I hate because domestic violence is a real thing.
Right.
But so it does deserve protection. I just I want to caution, you know, people against the misuse.
Yeah, and it happens. There's a lot of that. I mean, I know that as I was doing family law for some time, it was like, you know, sometimes you know your gut. You're like, this story does not make sense.
Right,
Elizabeth?
Yeah, like, you're afraid, but you went in there when you knew that he was there with his new girlfriend and then you got in his face because you were afraid.
Yeah.
No, and I know because like I also like I'm a woman, like, and I understand like how my mind works when I'm emotional. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and then sometimes they think, you know, there's some level of it. I mean, not to undermine domestic violence because that's horrible, right? But there are situations and circumstances where, you know, it's more of a misunderstanding.
Yes.
Versus this is domestic violence.
Yes.
And you know, I think amigas out there need to understand the differences.
Right. So like a misunderstanding is at an exchange, you know, at an exchange of a child, you know, grabbing someone, the baby won't go. You know, so then mom grabs the baby, dad grabs the baby, and there's a little bit of a tug and something, and the cops come, and that maybe that's domestic violence, even though it was an accident and no one intended it to be more.
Right. So there's just so much craziness that can happen. I mean, you know, we're human, you know, we're capable of making many mistakes. And, you know, we hire professionals such as Elizabeth to help us unwind and unpack that because, you know, just because me as a layperson believes that that party is at fault, in California, it's irreconcilable differences, right? It doesn't
Right.
matter. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Like,
The court just wants you to be divorced. It doesn't care why you're getting divorced.
why you're getting divorced, right?
Right.
So, I know that as I was doing more family law back in the day, one of the things as Latinas was like, in Mexico at least, it's like it's a fault state. So, like if you abandon your home, quote unquote, then there's repercussions. But here, it's not the case.
Right. Here
Definitely.
the only thing that's kind of like a fault thing is waste. So it's, let's say husband and wife are married, and wife has a new boyfriend on the side, and wife is spending community money on her new beau, then she's spending her half and her husband's half on this new guy. So
Yeah.
she has to pay back her husband's half, because she's breached the fiduciary duty that she owes to the community by wasting it on this other guy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the closest California gets.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I mean, there's some people have become very sophisticated in terms of hiding their money that way, right?
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you share a story?
Well, I mean, I heard one case where, they did everything in cash. They had, cash allowances. They were doing that envelope system. And so it was hard to track what was being spent where, because everything was in cash. There were no records. There were no bank statements. There were, he was not spending it on himself. He was spending it on someone else.
Oh my God. Oh God. The things that you hear, right?
Right.
You're just like, wow, this is a new one. Oh my goodness. So, I mean, I'm all about stories. And can you share with us like one of the most challenging family law cases you've had and why?
I think that the false allegations are the hardest for me, because when they're false, they're unforgivable. So a client had been accused of inappropriate behavior with a child, and an investigation clears the client completely, but you can't take that back. If you have years and years of parenting with that other parent, going forward until your child turns 18, and then even for the rest of the children's lives together, how do you get over that? It kind of ruins the co-parenting relationship that you would have otherwise had. And so those things seem unnecessary. I know that, some people can't help themselves, but to do it, but those are the hardest for me.
Yeah.
Because most everybody wants to be a good parent, so we have people that'll say, oh, he put the baby on the Harley and he took a picture and that he's a horrible parent, or, he got a dog and he didn't fence the pool, and so he wants to, he wants our child to fall in and the dog to eat the kid, and I'm like, no, we have to start at a baseline of like, everybody, both parents love your child, and no one wants to have your child be hurt. And so that's hard too, because whether you were in love for a few minutes or a lifetime, you had a child together, and that it's not the child's issue that you guys can't be together. And so do your best.
Yeah. And I think, and oftentimes in divorce, I have seen, they use the child as bait and manipulation. And it's unfortunate that does happen. I mean, I know, I can count so many stories, especially in the arena of domestic violence, where that is very real. Right. And then the flip side is like parental alienation, which, that's another thing. I mean, well, you know what? Why don't you explain to amigas out there, what is parental alienation?
So I have not seen a case with true parental alienation, but people come to me and say, she's alienating the child, he's alienating the child. Essentially it's when one parent is in the child's ear saying, the other parent is a bad person, not worth your time, not trustworthy, doesn't love you, doesn't love me, whatever it is, and kind of like tries to turn the child, you know, so that they're bonded or aligned more with the other parent. Now, again, the court, that buzzword, the court hates, you know, so we try to couch it in other ways, but it's difficult. And although the good thing is courts in California really now want to move toward 50-50, unless there's something where the court shouldn't go toward equal parenting time. You know, like there's, you know, drug abuse or criminal, you know, issues or alcohol abuse or domestic violence, you know, but otherwise the court will want to steer everybody that way, even if it's not today, you know, but down the road. Yeah. And so that is something for everybody to wrap their heads around for sure, because, you know, be careful what you wish for. I have had clients that have no time with their children and they say, I want 50-50 because for whatever reason, they want to pay less child support or whatever it is. And then they get 50-50 and they're like, this is hard. And I'm like, yeah, imagine being a single parent, you know, imagine what being a single mom is like, you know, it's difficult. So, you know, and moms are very, what's the word that I'm looking for? They hold on to the child because they're nervous about sharing sometimes. And that's okay. But when you share, you also get a night to yourself, maybe a weekend to yourself where you can go spend it with your friends or your family or recharge and do the things that need to feed you and feed your soul so that you're a better mom when your kids are back with you.
Yeah. And I remember that as a debate with some clients, it's like, oh, but he doesn't deserve to be with them. And he's a jerk and he's never around and blah, blah. And I'm like, well, guess what? Now he needs to be around. Enjoy it. Yeah. Enjoy having free time.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think oftentimes there's this misconception, at least I know as Latinas, we're such, you know, nurturers and we family first and all that. And you're the one that leads the family unit in the loving and caring way.
Yes.
But then that also prevents you from just putting your oxygen mask first.
Exactly.
You know, and when it comes to divorce, it's like, you know, there's a blessing. There is a blessing because now you get to have that free time, mm-hmm. You know, versus like, oh my God, woe is me for getting divorced. You know what? You know, it's even if we think this is forever, you know, it may not be, but let's just be okay with it. Be right. Okay.
Change is almost always scary, but it's not always bad.
Yeah. In the beginning, it's kind of like you're doing it very trepidatiously, right. But you know, when you're in it, then there's a point where it's like, you can relax, right? Amazing. Okay, so Elizabeth, yes. Now, how can, let's say for a woman, like just take for me, for example, I've now, you know, married 15 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, you know, it's a long durational marriage, mm-hmm. Right? There's these benefits to staying in a long durational marriage, like mm-hmm. the support and all that. If you are that individual who has been married for like 9 years, would you suggest that person to like consider maybe not filing for divorce because of?
Right. So it depends. So what Jackie's alluding to is in California, anything under a short-term marriage is 10 years or less. And presumptively spousal support lasts 1/2 the length of the marriage. Anything over 10 years, there's not a specific termination date on, and it terminates upon the remarriage of the supported person or the death of either party or further order of the court, whatever that means. So there are requirements that the supported spouse has to take reasonable steps to become self-supporting within a reasonable amount of time. Again, whatever that means. But it depends if you're the moneyed party or the payor or the supported party. So if you're going to be paying spousal support, before 10 years happens and you're miserable, you want to look and see if you need to file before the 10 years so that you only have to pay spousal support for 4.5, half of 9 presumptively. Or if you are going to be the supported party, then maybe you stick it out for a couple more years to see if it works, or maybe, go to counseling, try some other things to see if you can work it out. But then you're over that hump of it being a short-term marriage.
Yeah. Thank you.
Although
you for that.
Please don't stay miserable in anything.
Yeah.
Just for a couple months of spousal support.
Right. Exactly. Definitely. Like if you're
Mhm.
being abused, you don't want to be a part. Don't
Right.
stay. Don't
No,
stay.
but I've also, we've had consultations with parties, and said, this is what your divorced future looks like. And then they say, thank you for the consultation. I will stay married.
Well, that concept of saying like it's cheaper to keep her,
Yeah.
it's like the same thing with a guy, right? It's like,
Well, it's more expensive to live in, for it to live in 2 places.
yeah.
So know that, things don't stay exactly the same when they change.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds simple, but if you're living in a nice house and you have 4 kids and one person is working outside the home and one person is working in the home, but not earning a salary, it's going to be harder when you're living separate.
Yeah. You heard it here, amigas. So if you want to get to know, your rights, if you want to know a little bit more, if you're on that, you're teetering with it to get a divorce or not, you could definitely contact Elizabeth. And we're going to have all of her information in the show notes because she's amazing. I've known her for a long time. We used to be BNI buddies, and she's just got such amazing, tremendous work ethic. So if you need a divorce or kind of contemplating on it, she's your gal, amigas, okay?
Thank you, Jackie.
You're very welcome. So my love, before we end our conversation, I always ask my guests how an amiga can handle her shit, and if you can give us some tips on that.
So my best advice is sleep on that emotional communication, that Facebook post that you're going to post where you blast someone, that text that you are, you're hot and mad and you're going to send it, an email that you're going to send to a colleague or a boss or something. Write it, save it, sleep on it in the morning. If you want to send it, still send it, but that way you don't regret.
Yes, no regrets, amigas, no regrets. Absolutely. I think that we get in trouble when we lead by ego.
Right.
Like that's like and everything is discoverable, amigas. So please pay attention to what Elizabeth is saying, is that sleep on it before you actually send it out, especially if you're going to get a divorce. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here with us at Amiga Handle Your Shit podcast.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm honored. Thank you.
Oh no, the honor is all mine, my love.